Yo, what's checking, everybody? It is a breaking news edition of the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum. Do me a solid, like this video. Seriously, there's no reason not to tonight. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, do all those things that I ask you to do on the regular. Let your family know, let your friends know. Adonai Mitchell, A.D. Mitchell, the Georgia wide receiver that had entered the portal on Wednesday, has officially committed. And I don't know if he's officially signed yet, but he is committed to play ball for Texas. The Longhorns pick up a massive commitment through the portal after the deadline is passed for kids to enter the portal. It's a big deal for the Texas football program. It's one of the reasons why we are jumping on to do a live show late on a Friday night, because you can't control when the news breaks. And when the news breaks like this, you need to have a show. Big deal for the Longhorns. Again, A.D. Mitchell, let's lay it out for you. He's going to be a third-year junior. Had he stayed at the University of Georgia, the two-time defending champions, he was projected to be the number one wide receiver in that Georgia offense going into the 2023 season. He's a big dude, 6'4", 190 to 200 pounds. I guess depending on the day. I've seen various weights on him, but he's a big, athletic kid who makes big plays down the field. That is his specialty. And when you consider the needs of this Texas offense, it is, he's without question at this point the biggest pickup that the Longhorns have had at the portal. But when you consider that in 2022, this Texas offense had a big, gaping hole at the wide receiver position on the outside opposite of Xavier Worthy throughout the entire season. From the moment that Isaiah Nayor went down this past season to an ACL injury in August, the Longhorns didn't have the big playmaker on the outside opposite Worthy that they absolutely needed. And this kid, A.D. Mitchell, fills that void. He's almost a perfect complement to what the Longhorns need at that position. He's the guy that can go vertical down the field, be a big play specialist. When you think about all of the times this season that the Longhorns tried to go down the field to Xavier Worthy, they never were quite able to have the connection between starting quarterback Quinn Ewers and Xavier Worthy. All of the deep routes that were thrown to Xavier Worthy that he just never quite meshed with. This is more right up A.D. Mitchell's alley. This is what he specializes in, making big plays down the field, vertical plays, a big play specialist in that he caught touchdowns in the 4 playoff games that he played in, the NCAA playoff games over the course of the last 2 seasons. He caught touchdowns in every single game. He's a guy that Georgia did not want to lose. And for the Longhorns to be able to add him to suddenly a growing stable of wide receivers, it's a big deal for this Texas offense, which will be looking to adjust from leaning on a running game that included Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson in the last couple of seasons. It's an unsure running game going into 2023. I mean, it's not the Longhorns will lack talent at the running back position when you think of Jonathan Brooks and Jaden Blue and obviously Cedric Baxter coming in. You've got Keelan Robinson coming back for another season. You've got a foursome of running backs that you like in an offensive line that you feel good about, but they've still got to do it. They still have to figure it out. And in the meantime, this is a passing game that suddenly looks really dangerous when you consider they return Xavier Worthy, they return Jordan Whittington, they return Jatavion Sanders, they add A.D. Mitchell to the outside, Jonte Cook now coming up through the system as well. He'll get a lot of playing time in 2023. And yes, Isaiah Nayor, the forgotten man, this takes a little bit of pressure off of Isaiah Nayor to be ready to go in August and in September from a major reconstruction of his knee. We'll go to a couple of the Super Chat comments, and we'll get a little interactive here. Eric Torres says, proven alpha with some bling. and he committed with no wide receiver coach in place. Big 12 champs 2023. Eric, it's a fantastic point. The Longhorns don't have a wide receivers coach at this point. But what they do have is Steve Sarkisian. What they do have is a proximity to A.D. Mitchell's young child. I think all of this really begins with an urge and a need from A.D. Mitchell to get closer. He's from the Houston area, Missouri City, to be specific. He is, I believe his child lives in the Metroplex. So this just gets him closer to home. You throw in the fact that he gets to play inside of a Steve Sarkisian wide receiver friendly offense that I think they were able to sell to him. You are the missing piece that we didn't have in the offense this season. NIL plays a factor. I mean, this is the brave new world that we live in 2023, is that NIL is an absolute factor in a lot of these decisions. And the Longhorns, I think, are perceived, and I think there's a lot of truth to it. It's not just a perception that they are advanced in the NIL department over Georgia. Georgia may have had other advantages with regards to money in college football in previous years, but when it comes to established NIL programs, there's not really a lot of universities around the country right now competing at the level that Texas is putting together. You just add all of this up together. And look, I'm sure Eric mentions that there's no wide receiving coach in place. I'm sure I think Texas knows who they're going to get. I would be shocked. If Jacksonville loses in the playoffs to Kansas City this weekend, I think by Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we've got an announcement that Chris Jackson is the new Texas wide receivers coach. I'm sure Mitchell knows what's going to happen with regards to the wide receiving coaching position. But there's no getting around the fact that they did do this without a wide, I doubt he's had a chance to, if Chris Jackson's going to be the guy, and we think that he is, it's unlikely that he's talking to Chris Jackson before he's hired and before the Jacksonville season is over with. So a little bit of a leap of faith from his perspective, all said and done. Brandon jumps in and says, "Catch, you were right. Y'all can get off his butt." This is one of the SEC wide receivers that I have really been hinting about since October, November, certainly into December. One of the others was Barian Brown at Kentucky. And look, Barian Brown addressed the portal rumors back in November, saying that he wasn't going to go into the portal, and he didn't. Mitchell was a guy that I think behind the scenes, there was discussion that this was a guy that was probably looking to get closer to home to Texas. And there are programs inside the state of Texas that he could have looked at outside of Texas, Texas A&M, TCU, Baylor, SMU. Like, there are programs he certainly could have looked at. But again, the thing that Texas, this is one of the advantages that Texas has, that they need to be taking advantage of every single season. They have hundreds of kids that sign to play major college football every single season. What Texas needs to be able to be is a program that they can return to, that if it doesn't work out for whatever reasons, or if there are any instances where kids want to come home, like A.D. Mitchell wanted to come home to Texas, Texas needs to be ready to strike while the iron is hot. NIL, Steve Sarkisian, and this offense that, I think has a hugely positive reputation among prospects around the country. So when a kid like A.D. Mitchell is going to end up in the portal, if you're Texas, you've got to be ready to seize the moment. I think you've got to give the coaching staff and the people in charge of the NIL department at Texas a lot of credit. It's one thing to talk about it in theory. It's another thing to execute it perfectly. And this looks like a situation where Texas has executed its strength as a program in a way that makes the program better. Texas is a better football team and a better program tonight with this news than they were previously. But these things don't just happen on a whim. There's no accidents in play here. This needed to be Texas operating at a high level behind the scenes. And I think that is exactly what the situation proves, is that what I think Texas fans want Texas to be able to do with the advent of NIL in college football. This situation really brings it to a head. It's not the reason why A.D. Mitchell is a Texas Longhorn tonight, but it is a significant reason in my estimation as to why this thing went down the way that it went down. Another super chat comment from Biggins, Minnesota. My buddy is a huge Georgia fan. He is pissed that AD transferred. Georgia fans love this dude. This is a great addition. I think it's a really important point that Biggins brings up. This is not a kid that leaves Georgia and Georgia people were like, we've got talent. We've got other wide receivers coming in. Georgia signed two of the best wide receiver candidates in the portal in this offseason and going and getting Dominic Lovett, an all SEC player from Missouri. They go out and get Ra Thomas from Mississippi State. So they signed two of the better wide receiver targets in the portal this year. But it's not like they were thinking to themselves, we don't need A.D. Mitchell, a guy that has caught some of the most important passes in the history of the Georgia football program. I saw a tweet earlier this week from a Georgia fan that ranked the biggest, most monumental catches in the history of the Georgia football program, which is no small thing. This is a blue blood program. And this guy ranked two of Mitchell's catches, one against Ohio State and one against Alabama, as the top two single biggest catches in the history of the Georgia football program. They viewed Mitchell as a guy with NFL upside, NFL talent, that this upcoming season would have grabbed the reins as the wide receiver one in the Georgia program. And now he's at Texas. So the thing that, this is a good pickup. When the school that he leaves is upset and the fans that he leaves behind are distraught over the fact that they're losing this talent inside the Georgia program, that's not the case with most of the guys, all of the guys that left Texas in the last 45 days or so through the portal. Not a single guy was really projected to be an impact player, a starting level player for Texas as they entered the portal. A.D. Mitchell is unlike all of those guys. And again, he represents a talent upgrade and fills a big void in what Texas needed on the offensive side of the ball when we start looking ahead to 2023. Another super chat comment from Peyton says Texas needs a high flyer NIL deal for receivers. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We've seen that Texas has built the Pancake Factory. I don't know that. I think the Texas One Fund. I think what we're going to see from Texas in the world of the NIL moving forward are a couple of things. You've got the Texas One Fund, which I think people from the university would stress, if you're a Texas fan, that's where you need to go. You need to be going there, and just like you sign up for Orangebloods and you're paying your $10 a month, the Texas One Fund wants you to do the exact same thing, because you're helping pump money into an NIL program that kind of oversees all of the Texas sports. So you'll have that kind of program. And then I think you'll have individual players that are bigger than that. Think about a guy like Bijan Robinson and the NIL deals that he had. He didn't need the Texas NIL funds the way that some of these other players have needed. But you're not wrong, Peyton. At the end of the day, if they could have something like that for wide receivers, I think it would do really well for them. But whether it's Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, Isaiah Nayor, I'm sure John Tate Cook, all of these guys are taken care of, I think, in the scope of the NIL format that currently exists. But it certainly can't hurt that this happened. Tom G jumping into the super chat says, excited about what this year could be. Sark putting together a nice team. What are your thoughts on the tweets about AD NIL? I don't know about what tweets you're talking about. I'll just lean on kind of what I've already said, that NIL certainly, I think, plays a role in this, but I think you can count on kind of on one hand. It's more than any single thing. You've got one, the kid wants to come closer to home. He is a Missouri City, Texas kid who went to Nashville for a season to play high school football. He signs with Georgia, but he's a Texas kid with family in Texas that he wants to be closer to. That's a big part of this. I think number two, you've got Steve Sarkisian and the Texas offense. I think number three, their ability to sell the idea that he's the missing piece of this offense. I think one of the frustrations that I've heard that AD Mitchell had is that Georgia goes out and signs a couple of guys in the portal. I think he had questions about what his usage might look like this season inside of that Georgia offense. I think Texas was able to sell him on a role that he'll feel that will give him volume, that will give him a platform going into a contract year with the NFL. Because I don't think AD Mitchell is going to be at Texas. If this goes well, he's here for a season and then he's gone. He is an NFL level talent, a first or second day type of guy who just needs to stay healthy. And then, yeah, I think that the NIL part of this is another role. Like, I think that as he gets situated at Texas, he will find NIL opportunities that will surpass what he had at Georgia. Simple as that. You add all of those things up together, and I think that's how we get here. I think if you take any of those things out, this thing doesn't quite work as well, and maybe AD Mitchell stays at Georgia or he transfers somewhere else. It's the totality of the package that we're talking about. It's both NIL, but also the chance to come home, but also the chance to play for Steve Sarkisian, but also to play for Steve Sarkisian at a time when they need someone just like him in this offense. I really can't stress enough that the loss of Isaiah Nayor this season had a trickle-down effect on the Texas offense all over the place. Isaiah Nayor was supposed to be the deep threat this year in the Texas offense. All those deep balls that were thrown to Xavier Worthy, a lot of those were supposed to go to Isaiah Nayor. He gets hurt, and the weight of everything that this offense needed went through Xavier Worthy. I think this takes pressure off of Worthy to be something that maybe he isn't. I think he's better situated as a short and intermediate guy who constantly is able to get behind the defense, but they weren't able to connect and make those wide open plays work out. This will help take double coverage off of Xavier Worthy. AD Mitchell is an exceptional route runner. So now you have two exceptional route runners on the outside with Jordan Whittington and Jatavion Sanders working things in the middle. You can just see where the pieces of this Texas offense, forget about the quarterbacks for a second, just at the wide receiver and skill position pieces of the puzzle, you can see where this is better than anybody else in the Big 12. If the quarterback play raises its level of play, this is a Texas offense that should help get Texas in the Big 12 championship game. There is no reason, there are no excuses for Texas to not play in the Big 12 championship this season when you consider the pieces that they have that I just don't believe that anybody else in the Big 12 can match at this point. Chris, I see that you had a super chat, but no comment came with it. So shout out to Chris. I'll be looking for your next comment if you meant to actually have something to say in addition to supporting the channel. We do appreciate that. While I'm giving Chris a shout out, just to remind everybody who's coming in. Here's Chris. Real quick, Chris, I'll get to your question in a second. And Blake just sending me a notice. Let me check my email. Maybe it's in my email because Well, Texas hasn't sent anything out, but Blake is saying he has officially signed. I know that he tweeted out his commitment. I don't think it's a really big deal. I think this was going to happen. Texas wants him in class as soon as possible. In fact, and again, Chris, I'll get back to you in just a second. What I had heard maybe a week ago, the hope was that he would have been in place, into the portal, visited Texas, and maybe even in classes by Friday. They weren't able to do that, but it sounds like he'll be in classes on Monday. Wednesday would have been the last day that he could have registered. So all this stuff really works out for the good for Texas. All right, now I'll get back to Chris Denman's stuff. What up, Catch? Don't mean to sound negative. This looks like a good pickup on paper, but Quinn still has to get him the ball. That's what worries me. Chris, it is a fair point. The quarterback improvement in the program is no small thing, but having another weapon, an NFL-level player, to throw together with other NFL-related play. Again, I can't stress this enough. I think A.D. Mitchell is better suited to be the deep ball receiver that Texas needs. He's not going to run by people the way that Xavier Worthy can, but he can get open. He can get separation. He catches balls at the high point in one-on-one situations against opposing defensive backs. He's a guy that adjusts well to the ball, something that we know that Xavier Worthy sometimes struggles with. I think, ironically, one of the things about A.D. Mitchell that might make Texas fans cringe a little, Chris, is that A.D. Mitchell has occasionally struggled to consistently catch the football. So this isn't a guy that comes in with flypaper hands that catches every single thing, but I think some of Xavier Worthy's hands questions is a bit overplayed. He had 3 in the bowl game, but he had 7 before the bowl game. Xavier Worthy had 7 drops in 12 games, which is basically 0.5 per game. And when you consider the volume of balls that comes his way, I don't think drops have been a huge issue for Xavier Worthy. I think connecting with Xavier Worthy has been a big problem. I think he gets behind opposing defenses with ease and then sometimes struggles to adjust to throws. I think he sometimes gives up on balls that aren't thrown perfectly. Like, I think there are issues that Xavier Worthy has in this Texas offense that we saw this season that aren't hands related. Although he does need to catch the ball a little more consistently, so will A.D. Mitchell. But A.D. Mitchell, again, from a skill standpoint, brings something to the table that Texas lost with Isaiah Nayor. Now, again, the trickle down for this is that a guy like Isaiah Nayor will be 12 months removed from an ACL injury in August. Maybe he comes back from that 100% in 12 months. Maybe he doesn't. And the maybe he doesn't is fair, because a lot of times with receivers, skill players, it takes 2 years to completely get back to 100%. This gives Texas just a little bit more wiggle room. It's an insurance policy that they're going to have the guy they need on the outside, and it's a really big deal. Let me see. What else do we got going on here? More conversation and more points about the wide receivers coach. I think Jacksonville Jaguars wide receivers coach Chris Jackson is going to be the wide receivers coach. I think that gets announced Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You know, the expectation is the Chiefs will beat the Jaguars in the playoffs this weekend. That will then free up Chris Jackson to officially interview for the job, although I don't even know if that's going to happen. I'm convinced that Chris Jackson's going to be the guy. And when you're going to be the guy, little things like official interviews are kind of overplayed. I'm sure it will happen, but from what I'm hearing behind the scenes, through sources outside of Texas, NFL sources, they're expecting that Chris Jackson is going to be the Texas wide receivers coach. And I'm sure they were able to tell A.D. Mitchell that on his visit to Texas in the last 24 to 48 hours. So, I don't know how big of pieces the previous two portal pickups for Texas are going to be. Gavin Holmes, I think, is a really good cornerback that's at worst going to provide depth for this Texas team, but I'm really high on Terrence Brooks. I'm really high on Malik Muhammad as a first-year impact guy from this recruiting class. I think Texas is going to have depth at cornerback. I'm not 100% sold that Gavin Holmes is going to be a 12-game starter. You look at Jalen Catalon, and a little bit like A.D. Mitchell, certainly has had trouble staying on the field, and you wonder, 2 years removed from his best football, A, can he stay healthy? B, can he be an impact player? A.D. Mitchell is the guy for me that I look at among the three guys that Texas has picked up through the portal. To me, he's the guy that's set to make the biggest impact. It's not out of the realm of possibilities at all that A.D. Mitchell becomes wide receiver 1 for Texas this year. And you guys have to know, I say that as someone that thinks that Xavier Worthy is wide receiver 1, but these two guys are going to complement each other. And the competition is the bar has been raised. And if you want to be a guy that catches 100 balls in this offense, you're going to have to compete and perform and deliver day in and day out. And I don't think Xavier Worthy had to do that last season. I think that's one of the things. I think this will bring out the best in Xavier Worthy. And, there's just no reason not to be excited about this if you're a Texas fan tonight. Jeff says in the chat, a fellow Jeff, helps Nayor to be healthy and not rush back. I think that's a really big deal, really. I think you look at Isaiah Nayor, and I was we saw it with Trey O'Mary. You try to bring guys back off of major injuries a little earlier than they're ready for, and you can suffer setbacks that can really sidetrack a career. Isaiah Nayor, look, this isn't out of the realm of possibilities. Isaiah Nayor will play this season, but he can take his time in coming back. Maybe this isn't the big season that he thought he was going to have in 2022. Maybe it doesn't happen in 2023. But if A.D. Mitchell has the kind of season he's expected to have in 2023, along with Xavier Worthy, then both of those guys are going pro this season. After 2023, going into the 2024 NFL draft. And suddenly you've got holes at the wide receiver positions again, which I think at that point Isaiah Nayor may slide right back in. Isaiah Nayor is a very big piece of the wide receiver puzzle, but maybe not quite the big piece in 2023 coming off of a major injury. Personally, I think what matters is getting Nayor 100% healthy. If that's in September, fantastic. If that's in October, fantastic. If that's in November, fantastic. If that's in August of 2024, again, all that matters is that you get that guy who's significantly talented back to 100% level. This allows for him to just focus on getting healthy. Let's see. I'm looking through. Oh, really good question here. And I'll let this be one of the final questions before we shut things down. I've got like a sleepover going at the house. Breaking news on a Friday night when my kids have their 7-year-old cousin over for a sleepover. It's not the best thing in the world. Oh, by the way, if her mom is watching, Elena's mom, yes, it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm not quite sure the kids are asleep. RL from Chatsville says, I still think we have a shot at Deuce Robinson, the number 1 tight end in the country. He's a highly rated baseball player and wants to play both. Sark and Pierce are recruiting him. RL, I think Texas has a very sneaky good shot at Deuce. And ironically, I think it's going to come down to Texas and Georgia for Deuce Robinson. Don't discount Texas's chances with him at all. Gun to my head, I'd probably say Georgia. But if I was in Vegas, I think you're not getting great odds on Georgia. You're probably getting pretty good odds on Texas. And if I was hanging out with El Presidente in Vegas right now, I would say, hey, might not be a bad idea to put a hundo on Texas at like 5-1 or whatever the odds would be officially from Vegas on that, maybe 4-1. Maybe they're not astronomical odds, but Georgia's probably even money at best. Texas, you could probably get better value on a bet, and I think that Texas is in a good position with Deuce Robinson. I had a source a week ago specifically send me notice that Deuce is absolutely in play. Speaking of Eric Torres, he jumps back into the super chat with a give me your top three in the wide receiver room in 2023. Example, AD is number one in target and catches. Sanders number two. Worthy drops to number three with the field. I think Xavier Worthy is still the number one wide receiver in terms of target and catches. I think a healthy AD Mitchell is number two, maybe a close number two. Jatavion Sanders is number three. Jordan Whittington's probably the fourth option in the offense at that point. And then I think the wide receivers beyond those three, for me right now, Jonte Cook, even though he's just arrived on campus, I think he's got a chance to be the number four wide receiver in this offense, maybe the first guy in the rotation with everybody. Maybe I'm curious to see where they play Jonte Cook. Is he competing on the same side of the field at the same position as AD Mitchell? Do they put him behind Xavier Worthy? I think Isaiah Nayor is a guy that if he can get back to close to 100%, could maybe be the number five wide receiver in this offense, not including Jatavion Sanders at the tight end position. And then I like a guy like Ryan Niblett to potentially factor in behind Jordan Whittington in the slot. So this Texas wide receiving core all of a sudden very deep in ways that it wasn't. And just a month ago, this was a Texas offense at the wide receiver position that was leaning on Xavier Worthy and Jordan Whittington at the receiver spots. Didn't really have a number three, not including Jatavion Sanders, who quite honestly is the number two receiver in this offense in 2022 behind Xavier Worthy. But we're talking about the wide receiver position in general. They had two guys, and then it was Casey Kane some weeks. And, you know, there were other guys that looked like maybe Agiah Hall we thought might be that guy, and he didn't turn out to be that guy. I think Texas, if they can stay healthy with this group, I'm not going to go so high and say things like it's the best wide receiving core in the country or top three. That might be too much too soon. But the ceiling for this, I think it's the best group in the Big 12 by far. From there, where we go with it really comes down to how well these guys perform. So at this point, you can't say they're that kind of top three in the country, but they've got that kind of upside. And if you're Xavier Worthy, this is a huge win for you. This will help take double team pressure off your shoulders. This will help take deep ball stuff off of your shoulders and allow you to play more inside the realm of where I think his skill set is best situated, short, intermediate, and then some deep balls, but not play after play after play trying to force a square peg into a round hole. The celebration is taking place right now. RL from Chatsville is not only donating super chat dollars, he's getting his Tito's in. Can't say that I blame you at all. It's funny that I'm sitting here by myself on a Friday night and the numbers watching the video continue to grow. Makes me think that we should continue to do the show. The other part of me is like, it's 10 o'clock on a Friday night. I kind of want to watch The Last of Us tonight before I go to bed. Liverpool and Chelsea, 6:30 in the morning for me. So I'll tell you what, I'll give you a couple more minutes. If anybody else wants to sneak in one last super chat question, two last super chat questions, we'll do them. We'll look into the chat. Let me see if I can get a little drink of water real quick. Oh, that felt good. Just a little bit of, it's so good when it touches the lips. All right. let's. There's not a whole lot for me to say about Deuce Robinson right now, other than Texas is absolutely in the mix. He's going to make his announcement, I believe, on February 1st. Texas is right there. It's Texas and Georgia for my money. And as I said moments ago, if it were me, gun to my head, I'm picking Georgia, but don't discount Texas at all. I think their recruitment of Deuce Robinson somewhat reminds me of the recruitment of DeAndre Moore, in that Texas, I think, was the leader way earlier than I think the national experts picked up on. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Texas is the number one team right now for Deuce Robinson. I'm still, again, gun to my head, I'm picking Georgia, but it's way closer than I think people realize. I'm kind of with River Oaks here. 12-0. Let's shoot for 10-2. That's realistic. River Oaks Art Society, I'm right there with you. I think Texas absolutely should be playing in the Big 12 championship game next season. You figure they lose at Alabama, and then with the rest of the schedule, the final 10 games in front of them, you sneak in maybe a loss. This is the type of team that should go 10-2, 9-3 at absolute worst, and playing for a Big 12 championship. And anything less than that, massive disappointment. Massive. Tell you what, unless there's a super chat question that comes in, James, I'll let you have the last say on the show today. You say Whittington plays with a sense of urgency. I think you're going to see a wide receiver room next year full of guys with a sense of urgency. Obviously, it'll be Whittington's last year. Xavier Worthy, it's a contract year for him. A.D. Mitchell, it's a contract year for him. Jatavion Sanders, if he has a big year, it's a contract year for him. All of those guys are NFL draft eligible after this season. I think that is a big piece of the puzzle in terms of getting the most out of those guys. I think you're going to see everybody playing with a big sense of urgency. And on that note, I said, James, that would be you get the final word on that. Guys, I'm going to check out. I've been on this story all day. I wrote my incident analysis. I had the breaking news. We've done the video. Do me a solid. Hit that thumbs up button. Give us a like. Subscribe to the channel. If you've never subscribed to the channel, you get breaking news videos at 10 o'clock on a Friday night, because that's how we do it. Subscribe to the channel. Get this on social media. Tweet this out. Put it out on your Facebook page. Let people see this video breaking down the big portal edition of the offseason for the Texas Longhorns. Georgia wide receiver transfer A.D. Mitchell, officially a Texas Longhorn. We'll have plenty about this throughout the weekend over at orangebloods.com. We'll have the Monday Overreaction show on Monday. Thanks for all of you guys for hanging out with me on a Friday night. Thanks to Blake for producing when it sounded like there was a party at his crib, and we got it done. So on behalf of everybody, hey, thanks for hanging out. We'll see you guys soon. I'm Jeff Ketchum. This is your Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. You guys have a great week.